At Trump University, we teach success. That's what it's all about, success. It's going to happen to you. If you don't learn from them, if you don't learn from me, if you don't learn from the people that we're going to be putting forward, and these are all people that are hand-picked by me, then you're just not going to make it in terms of the world of success. I think the biggest step towards success is going to be sign up at Trump University.
Yeah, well, the thousands of people who were ripped off by Donald Trump's defunct fraudulent business school, Trump University, they might disagree with his lessons for success. The $25 million settlement in that 2018 Trump University case was at the time Trump's first and only major legal loss. A new book by the attorney who took on and beat Trump in that case offers a playbook for how prosecutors can do the same in their cases against the former president. And joining me now is former New York Assistant Attorney General Tristan Snell, author of Taking Down Trump, 12 Rules for Prosecuting Donald Trump by Someone Who Did It Successfully. Big welcome. We're going to talk about the book in a second. I have to say I enjoyed the smiles that were on your face as you were listening to Donald Trump and that self-promoting, thing about a fraudulent university. But let me ask you about Fani Willis, because the situation there, she has now admitted that she indeed is now in a relationship with a personal relationship with a special prosecutor in the case. And Willis argues the relationship has not corrupted her ability to oversee the case, but from what you deserve, has she violated any legal ethics? And would it be something that would be either disqualifying to her case or for the betterment of that case, should she step aside? Give me your thoughts.
As for whether it's a legal ethics issue, that's for the state of Georgia to decide. And I really feel like that's a bureaucratic question that is completely separate from the merits of this case. And we're talking about something that's look, it could be something significant. I have no idea. But the kicker is that the gravity and the weight and the size of this case against Trump is in completely different proportion to anything that Willis may or may not have done here with her relationship here.
Okay, we're going to get to the book now, Taking Down Trump. It is a 5-year bid that you had to hold Donald Trump accountable as you faced him. Tactics we've all become familiar with, right? I mean, we can look at him. Refusing to comply with subpoenas, attacking plaintiffs, accusing a judge of being biased against him. We've heard that time and time again. Let's take a listen to part of Trump's deposition in the case. Here's part of that you know well.
You can't answer the question as to whether or not when educators deliver less than promised for more money and claim they're doing something great, it's fraud, pure and simple?
I would say no, it's not fraud. It's trying to get a point across.
So it's not accurate.
It's not accurate, yeah. It's trying to get a point across.
And yet you have written that this particular case almost didn't happen?
Many, many times it almost didn't happen.
Wow.
Yeah, there were a lot of internal political battles to actually get this thing out to see the light of day. And a lot of what I write about in the book is how do we actually get these prosecutors, whether they're elected or appointed, to have the courage and the assertiveness to get in there and actually bring a case, which is separate from the merits. Let's assume there are merits. If there are not merits, the case should not be brought. But this case was very meritorious, but it was held up for about a year. And a lot of these other cases that we've seen, DOJ and the FBI held up the January 6th investigation of Trump and his inner circle. They did not really dig into that investigation for a whole year until I think the January 6th committee forced their hand. We saw it with Alvin Bragg, where basically the Trump case was put on hold for a year. He kiboshed it, then he brought it back. Public pressure is a big part of how you make these cases go.
But that is something that Jack Smith has shied away from. So what do you think about his tactic relative to that?
Well, I think the key there is that DOJ is going to be very sensitive to this because it's the Biden administration. You're not going to see anything look like they're trying to politicize this case. And they shouldn't, because it would be improper and it could backfire on them with the election and everything else. I do think that Jack Smith, and this is one that gets into some of the other rules in the book, I think they need to really push out there in the media while these trials are going on. Don't make it political, but just share with people the facts, shine a light on things that happen in the courtroom, The DC J6 case, we're not going to have cameras in the courtroom. We're going to have print reporters do their best to relay to all of us what was going on inside that courtroom. I think and then Donald Trump's going to be out there on the courthouse steps with his lawyers,
with his
lying,
right.
lying the whole time and twisting everything. We need to make sure that DOJ is out there. It may not be Smith, but there have to be people out there that have media savvy that are going to be able to factually and clearly explain to everybody what was going on in that courtroom.
Kind of like what we saw Tish James doing.
I think they did a great job of that. I think DOJ needs to do the same thing.
Let me ask you about the book, though. You have 12 rules that you say, this is how you go about doing it when you take down Donald Trump. Are any of the cases out there right now following your playbook?
I'd say pretty much most of them are. I do think that there's some things like what I want to see from DOJ. Not that it's up to me, but it'd be great to see from DOJ that they actually really tell a story, not just to the jury that they're going to be facing, but also to the media and to the public. They did do a good job of that in the indictment. I think the indictment was very clear. You didn't need to be a lawyer to understand what was going on with it, but we need to see them make that case to the people, because we're not going to be able to see what's going on in the courtroom. But what we've seen with these cases is the dogged determination to get to the bottom of these things has been happening, and that's why these cases are being successful.
And is that what was your assessment of the prosecution when it came to the E. Jean Carroll case?
I thought that civil case, they did a great job. And I think now we're starting to see so many people be able to follow these rules that now we're seeing private litigants, not just government authorities, be able to bring these. So I think that Carroll and her lawyers, led by Robbie Kaplan, I think they did a fantastic job of this. I cite to numerous examples of their work in the book. And I think we saw an even greater example of it with the new verdict that we got in the $83 million.
So listen, this is a great book. And for those who are not a lawyer but would have kind of dreamed of being one, so great. You can read all about it in the book. I'm glad to have it. And you think about, all right, that would be actually a good legal tactic. Thank you so much, Tristan. We will see you again soon. Again, the book, Taking Down Trump, 12 Rules for Prosecuting Donald Trump by Someone Who Did It Successfully. Thank you.